Verum Malum by Michael R. Collins.
Post-rictum. The ritual had ended. Something ticked in the back of the dim room. It could have been wood and plaster responding to the energy they had raised. It could be something tapping its claws against bone. It could be something completely imagined. The circle of people would believe any of these things readily. A body lay in the middle of the room, its torso opened and empty, entrails scattered about. A large hexagram filled with symbols and sigils lay under the blood. At the head sat an older man, his black robe open, his shirt underneath soaked and sticking to his pudgy body. His breath heavy as he pulled the cowl back. What little hair he had was plastered to his head with sweat. To his left lay a young man, still as death. Going around the points of the hexagram, each of the others came to their senses. A blond teen shook his head and then spat a bloody gob of kidney onto the floor. Beside him, another man, this one only a few years older, found his shaky legs and stood. Naked but for his boxers, he scanned the room and searched the corners left dark from the dying candlelight. He slicked his brown hair back with sticky hands. A woman who lay near the eviscerated body stretched and sat up. Naked, her torso was covered in blood, her hands and mouth dripping with it. "What have we done?" a hoarse voice asked. They all turned toward the speaker. A man stood at the only door to the room, taking in the horror before him. "We've debased ourselves. We've killed and we've introduced an evil into the world." "I thought that was the point," the older man said, covering himself with his robe. He found his legs and stood also. "You knew what the end result was to be. This should come as no surprise. By calling on that demon, you led us all straight to hell, Alexander," the man accused. "And we will go together, happily led by the work we've accomplished here. Ben, it's too late to run away." "Watch me," Ben said, his hand on the door handle. "You won't get far. If hell won't be on your heels, you know we will," the brown-haired man said. His piercing stare forced Ben to look away. "If I ever see you again, Marius, you can count your days on one hand." Ben opened the door and slipped through. They heard his bare feet slap against the steps. "What are we going to do about him?" the woman asked, her voice thick and sluggish. "Don't worry about him, Scarlet. We have done a glorious thing. Let him go for now. Ben will get what's coming to him. I will make sure of it." Alexander looked at the others. "I'm afraid Jacob didn't make it." The prone body still did not move. "Parker, I trust you will want to tend to your cousin." The blond teen stared at the body. He nodded after a moment. As the others continued to collect themselves, only Marius seemed unaffected, his hawkish gaze studying his companions with increased intensity. Chapter 1. 5 years later. Noah sat on the couch, staring at the phone in his hands. The thick silence of the living room unnerved him. He realized it wasn't the room that had become quiet, but his own head. It came from shock, not surprise. A throbbing numbness yielded to sharp anger. He remembered from experience the coming emotions: betrayal, sorrow, rage, and loss. That, however, didn't mean he would be prepared for them. He gently put the phone down, afraid of awakening it. If he did, it might have more bad news, worse than what he had just received, if that was possible. He walked over, across the room to the small, expensive stereo and flicked it on. Loud, syrupy pop music blared from the speakers. He turned it down enough just to make out the tiny thump of percussion and buzz of vocals. Noah didn't want the music, but he couldn't stand the silence. He stood in the kitchen, staring at the refrigerator. He didn't even know why he went in there, aside from the momentary distraction of movement. The cupboard above the cheap Frigidaire held an even better distraction. Opening the cupboard, he removed a bottle of vodka. Behind it sat a half-finished bottle of Southern Comfort. He held the vodka in one hand, the Southern Comfort in the other. He put the vodka back. Noah didn't care for the clear liquor. It tasted like cleaner to him. Despite an insistent voice in his head telling him to cease and desist, he filled a glass tumbler with ice. Each cube cracked and popped in its turn as he poured the dark amber liquid over it. The voice in his head became louder, warning him. Noah knew the voice in his head was Ben's, and he found it easier to ignore than he expected. Ben smelled the alcohol before seeing the glass on the living room table. Their small house, decorated in dark Art Deco, could hide few secrets. The glass was mostly empty. Only a few melting ice cubes remained. "Noah," Ben called out as he shrugged off his hoodie. "Welcome home, dear," came a caustic reply from the kitchen. Noah emerged, his eyes red, his tawny cheeks flushed. "How is your day?" Ben could tell that Noah hadn't completely passed over the threshold of drunkenness, but he had one toe over the line. "Off the wagon again after doing so well," he lamented. "I should ask you the same thing," he said, maintaining a friendly tone. "I see you've been relaxing." Relaxing had been a term they used years ago when he would often find Noah drunk, a bottle nearby. "Come relax with me." Fumes of rage followed Noah as he stomped to the couch and flopped down on it. "Have a drink." He patted the space beside him. "We should have thrown that bottle out," Ben sighed. Sitting on the edge of the cushion next to his husband, he asked, "What's this about?" "We should have a toast. It's a good day for toast, don't you agree?" Noah sprang back up. "I'll get you a drink. We'll toast." "And what are we going to toast to?" Ben asked, knowing he shouldn't enable Noah's behavior. "Your fucking health, that's what," Noah shouted. Ben said nothing. He stared at his shoes and ran his hand through his short, dark hair. Noah stood there, staring at him, waiting for him to look up again. "I take it the doctor called." "I haven't even gotten the results back yet. How did you?" Ben asked, making eye contact again. "He called earlier today," Noah said, his voice lower but no less angry. "He had no right to tell you. That's between him and me," Ben countered half-heartedly. This was not a fight he would win, nor did he want to. "Since your oncologist is my uncle, it would have been hard to keep it secret for long. How long did you think you'd hide the fact you were no longer in remission? Do you think I wouldn't notice?" Noah's eyes grew red and moist, and Ben had to turn away. He had seen eyes like that too often in the past. "It was just a routine check. No one suspected a thing. After the last time, we were so sure we beat the cancer. I didn't expect it to come back." "I understand that, I guess." Noah's tone grew softer as his ire subsided. "Is there anything else you want to tell me?" Ben cursed Dr. Anderson, Uncle Teddy, for being so forthcoming with his nephew. "There's no point in going for treatment. If it comes back too aggressive, it'll just delay the inevitable." "Bullshit, Ben. We still have a chance if it is treated hard and fast. Do it now." Noah exploded again, his dark face, normally pleasant and animated, twisted in forms of sorrow and rage. "You said last time—" "I'm not going through it again," Ben finished for him. "It's back for a reason, and I would rather let it run its course. If cancer is the way I go, then I accept it." "Well, I can't accept it." "You're not the one dying," Ben said in a flat tone. With that, Noah deflated and sat back on the couch. He laid his head on the broad shoulder of his husband. "I know, and you're right. I'm not the one that's dying. It feels like it, though." He looked up at Ben's face, at his strong chin and prominent nose. Along an olive-colored cheek was a small, shallow scar for which Ben always had a new story. That face, he would have to memorize its Eastern Mediterranean lines again. He would have to take it all in, like the last time, before the chemo and radiation ravaged him. They talked the rest of the evening, while Ben cooked, and then after dinner, they worked it out. After dessert, they made love passionately and with purpose. Then they did it again, for no other reason than they could. Noah fell asleep right after, but Ben lay awake. He watched Noah sleep, his handsome face at peace, and played with an errant hair, dark brown in the night shadow, until he snuffled and turned over. He would call the doctor in the morning even though he didn't feel any different. If the cancer had come back and he felt nothing, maybe it was still treatable. He hoped so, for Noah's sake. For his own sake, maybe letting it run its course would be the best thing. If that were the case, at last he could admit he had outrun the devil long enough.